They are the first one to ask how you are doing. They are the one who remembers. The birthday, the job interview you mentioned 3 weeks ago, the appointment you were nervous about. They show up. They follow through. They hold the thread of every conversation and carry it forward with a precision that makes other people feel genuinely seen. They are competent, organized, reliable in ways that other people quietly depend on without ever having to ask. At work, they are the one others come to. At home, they are the one who keeps things running. In a crisis, they are the one who does not panic. Everyone around them assumes, with a casualness that has never been examined, that they are fine, that they are handling it, that they are somehow built differently, more capable, more stable, more okay, and they have never corrected this assumption. Not once, because somewhere along the way, they stopped knowing how. In the next 15 minutes, I'm going to describe a psychological profile that affects more people than almost any other and is diagnosed less than almost any other. High-functioning anxiety, high-functioning depression, the internal experience of someone who is, by every external measure, succeeding, and who is, by every internal measure, fracturing. I'm going to tell you what it actually feels like from the inside, why it develops, what it costs, and why the people who suffer it most severely are the least likely to ever receive help for it. Not because help is unavailable, because they do not look to anyone, including themselves, like someone who needs it. By the end of this, you will understand the architecture of the high-functioning collapse. You will understand why the performance of stability is itself one of its symptoms, and you will have a framework for beginning to close the gap between who you appear to be and who you actually are. Let me tell you what a Tuesday looks like. You wake up before the alarm because your nervous system does not trust sleep the way other people seem to. The first thought is not rest. It is the list. Everything that needs doing, everything that could go wrong, everything you said yesterday that you are already re-editing. You get up. You perform the morning. Coffee. Routine. The face that the day requires. You go to work. You are good at your work. Genuinely good. The competence is not a lie. That is the part that makes this so complicated. The competence is real, and it runs entirely on a fuel source that is slowly, invisibly, running out. You come home. Someone asks how your day was. Fine. Good, actually. Busy. You make the dinner, or answer the emails, or do the thing that needs doing next. And somewhere around 9 or 10 o'clock, when the last obligation of the day has been met, you sit down, and for a moment, just a moment, the performance stops. And in that gap, in the space between the last task and sleep, something rises. Not a thought, not a feeling you could name cleanly. Something older and heavier than either. A sense of being very far from shore. A sense of running a race that no one told you had no finish line. A sense of being, despite all the evidence to the contrary, completely and utterly alone inside your own life. You sit with it for a few minutes. Then you go to bed, because tomorrow has another list, and the list does not wait. And this nightly moment between the last task and sleep is the only honest moment in your day. High-functioning anxiety is not a clinical diagnosis. It is a pattern, a specific constellation of traits and behaviors that produces a person who appears from every external angle to be thriving, while internally maintaining a state of near constant alert. Let us look at the profile precisely. The high-functioning anxious person is almost always highly productive, not in spite of their anxiety, because of it. The anxiety functions as an engine. It drives the preparation, and the follow-through, the attention to detail, the inability to leave things undone. What looks like conscientiousness from the outside is, from the inside, the management of dread. The dread of being caught unprepared, the dread of letting someone down, the dread of the gap between what they project and what they actually are. This is the first defining feature. Performance as anxiety management. The second feature is hypervigilance. The high-functioning person reads rooms expertly. They detect shifts in mood before anyone has spoken. They adjust their behavior in real time based on what they sense the situation requires. They are extraordinarily attuned to other people and almost entirely disconnected from their own interior signals. Because the hypervigilance was originally turned outward as a survival strategy. In an environment where other people's emotional states determined your safety, reading the room was not a social skill. It was a necessity. The third feature is the absence of visible breakdown. This is the one that matters most and is understood least. High-functioning people do not collapse in public. They have an extremely well-developed capacity to defer their own distress, to file it, to say internally, not now, and then, not now again, and again, and again, until not now has become so habitual that they have lost access to the now in which the distress is actually lived. Psychologists call this deferred emotional processing. The distress does not disappear. It is stored in the body, in the background, compounding. There is a second dimension to this profile, high-functioning depression, which is, if anything, even less visible than high-functioning anxiety, because depression, culturally, is understood as incapacity, an inability to function, a withdrawal from life. High-functioning depression looks nothing like this. It looks like someone who keeps going while experiencing a persistent, low-grade absence of color. Not sadness, exactly. The absence of the thing that makes ordinary moments feel worth having. The food that tastes like food. The conversations that are technically pleasant. The achievements that register as complete without registering as meaningful. The life that is, by every objective measure, good, and that feels, from the inside, like living behind glass. Researchers call this anhedonia, the reduced capacity to experience pleasure from activities that previously produced it. In high-functioning depression, the anhedonia rarely reaches the severity that would force someone to stop. It simply dims, persistently, invisibly, while the person continues to perform their life with what appears to be full engagement. And here is the psychological mechanism that ties all of this together. The performance itself becomes the problem. Because every day that the high-functioning person successfully maintains their appearance of stability, every meeting managed, every crisis absorbed, every "I'm fine" delivered convincingly, they reinforce in their own nervous system the belief that what is happening inside them is not real enough to name, not serious enough to address, not visible enough to warrant help. The competence becomes its own cage. The more functional you appear, the more impossible it becomes to say, "I am not actually okay," because the evidence against you is everywhere. You came to work. You delivered. You smiled when someone needed you to smile. How could someone who did all of that be struggling? And so the gap widens. Between the self the world sees and the self that sits alone between the last task and sleep, knowing the distance between them, saying nothing I want to tell you about a woman named Claire. Claire is 36. She runs a team of 12 people. She is, by unanimous account, an exceptional manager. She develops people. She advocates for them. She stays late when she needs to and never makes her team feel that their needs are inconvenient. Outside work, she is the friend who shows up, the sister who calls, the partner who remembers. She has, by her own description, a full and fortunate life. She also has not slept through the night in 4 years. She wakes between 2 and 4 in the morning, reliably, with a low electric current of dread in her chest that has no specific object. She has learned to treat these hours as administrative time. She answers emails, she makes lists, she plans, she turns the 3 a.m. dread into productivity with a fluency that impresses even herself. She has never told her partner about the 3 a.m., not because she doesn't trust him, because she cannot find a way to explain something that produces no evidence. She is not falling apart. She is functioning at an exceptionally high level. How do you explain that the exceptional functioning is partly what is wrong? That the lists and the preparation and the competence are not signs of well-being, but the machinery of someone who learned very early that falling apart was not available to them. Claire's mother was unreliable, not cruel, unreliable. The kind of unreliable that meant a 7-year-old Claire became, by necessity, the most reliable person in her own life. She learned to anticipate, to prepare, to never be caught without a plan. She became, in effect, her own parent. And the child who has to parent themselves develops a very particular skill set, an extraordinary capacity for function, and an equally extraordinary incapacity for rest. Claire does not know how to be held, not because she is closed, because she was never in an environment where being held was safe enough to learn how. So she holds everyone else. And at 3 a.m., when the holding briefly pauses, she meets the part of herself that has been waiting, patiently, for someone to ask, how do you begin to close the gap between who you appear to be and who you actually are? Not by stopping the functioning, not by performing collapse, but by beginning, slowly and on your own terms, to let what is real have somewhere to exist. 3 steps. Step 1, name the gap without judgment. The first step is the hardest. It requires you to say, somewhere private, the thing the functioning has been covering. Not to anyone else, not yet. To yourself, I appear to be fine, I am not fine. Both of these things are true simultaneously, and there is no contradiction between them. The functioning is real. The distress beneath it is also real. You do not have to choose which one is true. You do not have to stop functioning to validate the distress. You only have to stop pretending that the functioning is the whole story. Write it down if you need the weight of it to feel real. I wake at 3 a.m. and I have not told anyone. I have not cried in longer than I can remember, and I do not know if that is strength or something else. I am the person everyone relies on, and I am running on a reserve that I do not know how to replenish. The naming does not solve anything, but it stops the gap from growing, because a gap you can see is one you can begin to navigate. Step 2, interrupt the performance. Once per day, you do not need to collapse. You do not need to tell everyone the truth about your 3 a.m. You need 1 moment per day where the performance pauses, where you allow what is actually present inside you to exist, briefly, yet privately, without management, without immediately converting it into a task, without turning the dread into a list, without performing fine at yourself. 10 minutes, somewhere without an audience. Sit with whatever is there, not to analyze it, not to solve it, not to assess whether it is serious enough to warrant attention, just to let it be present. This is not indulgence. This is maintenance. The engine that has been running without oil does not need to be shut down. It needs lubrication. One honest moment per day is the minimum viable act of self-witness. It is not enough to heal. It is enough to stop the fracturing from deepening. Step 3. Tell one true thing to one safe person. This is the step that changes everything, and the one that is most resisted, because the high-functioning person's deepest fear is not failure, it is dependency. The belief, installed early, running constantly, that needing something from another person is a burden, that asking to be held is an imposition, that the relationship between you and everyone you love is conditional on your continued capacity to function. This belief is not true, but it is very old, and it will not dissolve through reasoning. It dissolves through evidence, and evidence requires risk. So the step is this: find one person. One, the person in your life whose response you trust most. Not to fix it, not to worry appropriately, just to receive it, and tell them one true thing, not everything. One thing: I have not been sleeping. I have been more depleted than I've been letting on. I am okay, but I am not as okay as I seem. And then let them respond, without managing their response, without immediately reassuring them that you are fine. Actually, don't worry. Just let the true thing exist between two people for one moment. The world will not end. They will not leave. You will not shatter. And something in your nervous system, something that has been waiting for a very long time, will register the safety of being known and begin, at last, to rest. The gap between who you appear to be and who you actually are is not a flaw in your character. It is the architecture of someone who built their entire life around not being a burden, around being the one who handles it, around making sure that your own needs never became someone else's problem. That was not weakness. That was an adaptation, an extraordinarily sophisticated adaptation to an environment that either required your stability or rewarded it so consistently that you stopped questioning whether you were allowed to be anything else. But here is the cost of an adaptation that is never allowed to rest. It calcifies. What began as a strategy becomes an identity. What began as something you did becomes something you believe you are. The capable one, the reliable one, the one who does not need. And the person underneath that identity, the one who wakes at 3 a.m., the one who feels very far from shore, the one who has been running the machine without once asking who is running them. That person is still there. They have always been there, waiting not to be fixed, just to be known. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are not failing. You are someone who has been very strong for a very long time in a way that nobody sees, and the invisibility of that strength is its own particular loneliness. It is allowed to be named now, here, by you. That is enough. There is a moment that most high-functioning people know. They are in a room full of people. The room is warm. The conversation is good. By every available measure, this is a moment worth having. And they are there, present, engaged, saying the right things. And somewhere beneath all of that, distant, persistent, unanswerable, the question, is this it? Not a crisis question, not a dramatic question, a quiet one. The question of someone who has been so busy performing their life that they have not had time to check whether they are actually living it. That question deserves an answer, not a philosophical one, a personal one. What would your life feel like if the performance stopped? Not collapsed, stopped. If you were allowed to be exactly as uncertain, exactly as tired, exactly as unfinished as you actually are, so what would remain? That question is where the real work begins. Not in the productivity, not in the functioning, in the gap, in the space between the last task and sleep, in the 3 a.m., in the moment when the performance pauses and the actual person is briefly, quietly present. Next time, we are going to talk about what happens to people who are so attuned to everyone around them that they have lost the ability to locate their own feelings beneath the weight of everyone else's. The ones who feel everything, for everyone, all the time, and who have been slowly, without realizing it, disappearing. If this reached something in you, the 3 a.m. part, the nightly gap part, the is this it part, let it. You do not have to explain it to anyone yet. Just let yourself be seen, even if only by you, even if only right now. That is the beginning.